were 31 teenagers, bursting with excitement, chasing one final thrill before stepping into adulthood. Then, nothing. No messages, no remains. Just an eerie, consuming silence. For 22 years, the fate of the class of '99 faded into myth. A chilling fireside story whispered in nervous tones, until a lone hiker made a discovery in the deep woods. What he found was no ghost story. It was a rotting school bus, hidden beneath decades of moss and time, harboring something far worse. June 3rd, 2021, Rogue River, Oregon, deep inside the Siskiyou National Forest. A veteran hiker strayed off his usual trail and noticed a strange flash of yellow through the trees. He thought it was junk, maybe old gear or an abandoned ranger station. But as he got closer, his breath caught in his throat. It was a school bus, half buried by nature, faded, crumbling, number barely legible. Inside, it looked like time had been trapped. Dusty backpacks on rusted seats, Polaroids stuck to windows, a warped tape player on the floor, yearbook pages fused by mold, like the forest itself had been reading their stories. And in the far back, under a pile of forgotten clothes, something the forest hadn't quite buried. A jawbone. Human. When officials arrived, they linked it instantly to one of Oregon's coldest cases, the vanishing of 31 teens from Forest Grove High. But the more they searched, the stranger it became. There was no rental record, no road to reach the site, no signs of how the bus got there. Trail cams showed nothing, yet inside, personal items from nearly every missing student. Some were strangely untouched, others disturbingly arranged, like a coded message or an offering. Whatever happened inside that bus wasn't just a disappearance, and whatever the forest had been hiding for 22 years, it was never meant to be uncovered. Back in May 1999, Forest Grove High pulsed with end-of-year energy. Lockers slammed, seniors laughed, teachers wore countdown smiles. Graduation loomed, and freedom was a week away. But in that excited crowd, 31 students stood out, not for fame, but for their bond. They were close, tight like siblings, linked by years of heartbreaks, secrets, and after-game bonfires. Lacey Monroe glided through the halls, folder in hand, her future glittering with ivy dreams. Daughter of Mayor Thomas Monroe, she was the pride of the city, a model student, a leader. But behind the smiles were late-night breakdowns and anxiety attacks no one ever saw. A few lockers down, Jared Fields filmed everything with his ever-present camcorder, the joker of the bunch, loud and fearless, but with a filmmaker's eye no one appreciated. "This is my Blair Witch," he joked, but funny. His final project, documenting their last week together. Tyrese Hall was a quiet giant, a football star with a full ride to Oregon State and eyes filled with doubt. Everyone expected greatness. His coaches, classmates, especially his mom. But inside, he was terrified. What if he'd already peaked? Then there was Emily Tran. Silent, watchful, always sketching. Her sketchbook was filled with haunting forest scenes and portraits of classmates who never posed. She rarely spoke, but when she did, people remembered. She wasn't quite one of them, but somehow she belonged. They trusted her. That Friday, the final bell rang to a wave of joy. Cars blared Green Day. Teachers handed out slips, and excitement buzzed like static in the air. Everyone was talking about the camping trip. June 5th, 1999, was meant to be the start of a beautiful ending. 31 teens left for the Rogue River and never returned. For months, the students of Forest Grove High had dreamed of their graduation getaway. After finals, college acceptance letters, and years trapped in a quiet town, this was their escape. Their destination: a secluded campsite hidden in the depths of Oregon's Rogue River Siskiyou wilderness, far from home, far from supervision, far from anyone who could stop them. That Saturday, they boarded a yellow school bus, laughing, shouting, ready. Their driver, Harold Griggs, wasn't the usual one. A last-minute fill-in after the regular driver called in sick. The bus rolled away under a cloudy sky, students waving as camcorders rolled, and parents smiled. One snapshot, taken moments before departure, captured 27 hopeful faces. It would become the last known image of any of them. That night, Elsie McClure, mother of senior Rachel McClure, received a chilling voicemail. Rachel's voice came first, then laughter. A harsh voice yelling, "Turn that off." Then a strange silence. No goodbye, no click, just a slow build of static. When the bus failed to check in, the campground assumed a late arrival. Fog had rolled in. The roads were unforgiving. Tight turns, steep drops, no sig. Calls went unanswered. By Sunday, concern turned to fear. Search teams launched at dawn. Helicopters hovered. Bloodhounds combed the forest. But there was nothing. No tracks. No skid marks. No calls or footprints. A campground manager confirmed. No bus had arrived. It was as if 31 people had simply been erased. On day 3, the perimeter expanded. Hope began to fray. A week later, something surfaced. A clue, or maybe a trick. A fisherman near a bend in the river spotted something odd in the mud. A disposable camera, cracked, half submerged. Inside, no photos. The film had been carefully removed. 10 days later, another unsettling development. A letter. It arrived at the Callahans' doorstep, parents of Trevor Callahan. No stamp, no return address. Just 5 handwritten words. "We made it. Please stop looking." At first, it gave them hope. A sign, maybe. But handwriting analysts weren't convinced. The letters were close, but not quite right. The pressure inconsistent. It was either a forgery or something worse. The note triggered whispers. Some believed the teens had run away, faked it all. Others claimed it was something darker, a cult or a ritual gone wrong. A few clung to theories of survival, of students living off-grid. But facts told a colder story. No bus, no bodies, no sightings. No witness ever stepped forward. No conclusive evidence was ever found. 2 months in, the investigation was quietly shelved. Officially, it was labeled a mass disappearance, unsolved. But for the parents, time stopped that day. Many returned to the forest year after year. Some kept flyers alive, faces on boards growing older in theory only. One father, Robert Vasquez, became obsessed. He logged every phone tip, rumor, dead end. In his journal, he once wrote, "They didn't crash. It wasn't a wrong turn. Something took them. Something that doesn't let go." He never elaborated, but no one could argue. 21 years passed. The high school moved on. New lockers, new laughter, new names. But some echoes never faded. Near the front office, a bronze plaque remained. Class of 1999. Gone, never forgotten. Each June, the school lit 27 candles. Some teachers retired early, worn down by memories. Others stayed, unable to leave the past behind. Across town, time barely ticked forward. Bedrooms were frozen in time. Books unopened. Drawers untouched. Trophies collected dust. Clothes waited. Beds stayed made. as if their owners would return at any moment. Some parents clung to hope like breath. Others fell into silent despair. Not loud, not dramatic, just heavy and constant. Mr. Delaney, whose son Matthew was valedictorian, spent his days rereading the same library book. It was the last thing his son had checked out, and he never returned it. Over and over, Mrs. Santos, whose daughter Nina once ruled the soccer field, tended to the same garden her daughter had planted just weeks before she vanished. She never picked a single flower, but no one clung tighter than Irene Monroe. While some parents surrendered to grief, Irene sharpened hers into obsession. She refused to hold a memorial, refused to sign any paperwork. She kept Lacey's toothbrush untouched, her voicemail saved, her bed made with military precision every single morning. "She's not gone," Irene would insist. "I don't know where, but she's alive. I know it." Some neighbors called it madness. Her sister called it love. Then, June 3rd, 2021, just before noon, Travis Milner, a firefighter on leave from nearby Medford, Oregon, ventured deep into the rogue river Siskiyou Forest. He wasn't searching for answers, just quiet, the kind of silence the world rarely gives. But hours into his hike, pushing through dense thickets and unmarked terrain, something caught H, a faint curve of yellow, nearly swallowed by the forest. At first, it looked like trash, but as he cleared branches and moss, the shape emerged. Windows, a rusted metal shell, faded rubber crushed into the earth, a school bus, rotted, sunken, devoured by time. The side was nearly illegible, but just visible beneath the grime. Bus number 57. The door was sealed tight, warped by years of rain and silence. He wrenched it open. A rush of stale, choking air hit him like a slap. Inside was a tomb. Dust coated the walls. Ivy pierced through shattered glass. Seats torn apart. Bags crumbling where they lay. A Letterman jacket, still bearing the Forest Grove crest, drooped from a seat near the rear. 2 ruined graduation caps lay nearby. And then, bones. Not just 1, not 2. 17 separate remains, tangled in debris and moss, some skeletal, some still bearing the awful remnants of flesh. Milner stumbled outside and dialed 911 with trembling hands. By nightfall, the clearing swarmed with officers, crime scene analysts, forensic experts. The headlines exploded. The mystery from 1999 had reawakened, and it was uglier than anyone imagined. Inside the bus, investigators began a meticulous catalog of everything they found. Most items were destroyed by time, soggy, decayed, nameless. But beneath the driver's seat, hidden in a mold-eaten backpack, they found something strange. A manila folder. Somehow, still intact. Inside, drawings. Charcoal and pencil, signed in the corners. Emily T. Emily Thompson, one of the missing seniors, one of the few whose remains were not found. The sketches were unsettling. One showed human shapes in a circle around a bonfire, deep in the woods. Another, blank faces behind crude, childlike masks. The most disturbing drawing, thick black lines, trees bleeding from their branches, blood dripping into a symbol, jagged, circular, unknown. Behind the figures, symbols, not in any known language, spiraled around the borders. Some pages were torn as if ripped from a journal. The final sketch froze the entire investigation. It was the bus, but it wasn't. The windows were shadowed, and outside stood tall, faceless beings. No eyes, no mouths, only voids. In the driver's seat, a masked figure, expressionless, watching. Authorities confirmed the identities of the 17 sets of remains using dental records and DNA. Of the original 31 people, 29 students, 2 adults, only 17 had been recovered. 9 students unaccounted for, and both teachers, Mr. Carl Muse, history, and Miss Janine Crawford, chaperone, still missing. Theories of a runaway class, a lost bus, an accident, all evaporated. There were no roads wide enough, no signs of a crash. The bus had been moved there, deliberately hidden. But why only 17 bodies? Where were the others? And how could Emily, the quiet girl barely noticed in life, have left behind the only clue they ever found? In her notebooks, she'd drawn scenes, eerie, ritualistic, and unsettling. With those sketches as a clue, search teams swept the area within half a mile of the bus, but the forest was dense, suffocating. No footprints, no scattered belongings, no signs of escape, just the thick silence of the woods and something unseen, something that felt wrong. The case was no longer about closure. It had become something darker. Now it was a potential crime scene, possibly a mass grave. Theories erupted when the drawings leaked to the press. Symbolic images, masked figures, blood circles, and trees that bled. People began to ask, did someone lure them here? Was this trip ever meant to end in graduation? As reporters flooded the town, the police station in Bend turned chaotic. News vans lined the street. Locals crowded outside with questions. What happened to those students? Why were only 17 found? And why had no clue surfaced in 22 years until now? Then, on the morning of June 10th, something even stranger happened. A man walked into the station. It was early. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The air was dull, routine, until the glass door creaked open. He entered slowly. Thin, ghostly, his jacket hung loose on his frame. His hair was matted, clinging to a pale, sunken face. His eyes, hollow, jittering like a trapped animal's, scanned the room. The officers, mid-conversation about the bus, stopped talking. The man didn't seem to notice their stares. He moved forward, step by step, until he reached the counter. Then, in a voice as fragile as old paper, he spoke. My name is Jared Fields. I was part of the class of '99. The room froze. The words sat heavy in the air. No one spoke. No one breathed. Fields had vanished, with the rest of his classmates, 22 years ago. There had been no trace, no sighting, only names on a plaque. Sergeant Emily Wells stepped forward slowly. Sir, can we see your ID? But he didn't answer. His head twitched. His eyes flitted to the corners of the room. Who's watching you, Mr. Fields? She asked carefully. He shook his head. Fast, desperate. I don't know, he muttered. I don't know. But none of us were meant to leave. He didn't sound like a man who had survived a tragedy. He sounded like someone who'd barely escaped something monstrous. Something alive. Sergeant Wells leaned in, more firm now. Mr. Fields, we need answers. Where have you been? What happened in that forest? Where are the others? His hands gripped the counter like he might collapse. His voice broke. I can't. Not yet, not until. He stopped, choked, like even speaking it out loud might call it back. Before Wells could press further, a forensic tech entered the room with a folder, a report. The officer handed it to her. She read it. Her face changed. DNA matches, she murmured. Fingerprint too. This is Jared Fields. The room tensed. For the first time since stepping inside, Jared looked up. His eyes widened with dread. "I told you," he whispered. "I shouldn't be here. I broke the rule. I wasn't supposed to come back." No one moved. The mystery had come looking for answers. But what stood before them wasn't clarity. It was a warning. Wells tried again. "Jared, what happened out there? Where have you been all this time? Where are the others?" But Jared's face twisted, not with pain, but fear, terror. It clung to him like a second skin. He took a step back from the question, like the words themselves could consume him. "I can't. Not yet," he whispered. "They're still watching. They don't stop." A freezing stillness filled the room, the kind that makes walls feel like they're leaning in. The officers stood motionless, unsure if they were looking at a victim or a warning. The man they hoped would bring clarity now trembled like someone staring back at something unspeakable. Then, without warning, Jared Fields turned away from the desk. "I can't be here," he muttered. "If I stay, they'll know." Sergeant Wells reacted quickly. "Mr. Fields, wait, you have to." But the words died as the door slammed shut behind him. He vanished as quickly as he'd appeared. What should have been the end of a mystery had become the start of something far worse. They now had a survivor. But whatever he survived, it hadn't ended, not yet. Days later, in a stark interview room with gray walls and too much silence, Jared sat across from them. His eyes still held that look, that hunted, hollow gaze. For hours, they'd listened to his fragmented memories. But now, something shifted. He leaned forward. "They're gone," he said. "All of them. The ones who said no, they were taken." His voice cracked with the weight of those words. The air in the room seemed to tighten. This was it. The unraveling of the truth they weren't sure they wanted. "It began when the bus died," Jared continued. "We were deep. No service. No help. The engine quit. Just silence." He paused. His hand trembled slightly. "We waited. No one came. And then they did." He looked up. "They wore robes, gray, dirty, like they'd come from the earth. They said they were the chosen." He swallowed hard. "They told us the world outside was collapsing, that they had found a sanctuary, a way out, off-grid, safe." Jared's tone turned cold. It sounded insane, but we were stuck. No phones, no road, no idea how to fix the bus. We followed, not because we believed them, but because we were desperate. Across the table, the investigators said nothing, but their eyes sharpened. Jared's voice picked up speed. At first, it was peaceful. Food, shelter, calm. They said we could rest, that we were safe. But even then, something felt wrong. The air was heavy. Everything moved slow, too slow. He rubbed his arms like the memory made his skin crawl. Then the talks began. About forgetting, about cleansing. We weren't allowed to talk about our homes, our lives. They told us our past was poison, that we had to let go. The word hit the room like a curse. Jared's jaw clenched. They gave us meals, but they tasted strange, like something was mixed in. We started having dreams, not just dreams, visions, vivid, terrifying, too real. Then came the sleep schedules, strict, controlled. You didn't sleep when you were tired. You slept when they told you. They were always watching. He blinked slowly. His voice felt. Some tried to leave. A few kids. They couldn't handle it. They whispered about running, about breaking free. He looked away. I heard them scream, he said quietly. I heard them when the forest took them. They were dragged into the trees. They never came back. The room held its breath. What he was describing wasn't a breakdown. It wasn't trauma. It was a ritual, and they were only beginning to understand it. It hung in the room like an invisible fog, thick, suffocating, unknowable. Jared's mouth quivered as he whispered again, his voice fraying like old rope. They said they were the chosen, that everything outside the forest had ended. He paused, swallowed. All that remained was them, their sanctuary. And we were the lucky ones, they said. His eyes dimmed, full of something ancient and terrified. But we weren't chosen. We were trapped, and the ones who resisted. He stopped again. His breath faltered. They were offered to the trees. A silence as deep as the grave swallowed the room. Jared's hands clenched as he looked past the present, reliving a moment none of them could see. They never came back. The agents barely moved, every word from him drawing them deeper into something that defied reason. By 2006, Jared muttered, I'd had enough. I planned my escape in silence, one step at a time, always pretending. And then I ran. I never looked back. His eyes dropped to the table, shadows dancing across his face. I never told anyone. I hoped maybe they'd forget me, that I could start over. But then his jaw tightened, his voice dropped. I was wrong. When I saw the report, the bus, the evidence, I knew. They hadn't forgotten, and I couldn't stay silent anymore. The room tightened around them, the walls seeming closer now. This wasn't just a disappearance. It was a ritual, a system, a carefully orchestrated nightmare. 27 students vanished, their lives altered, erased, consumed, all for a belief no one could fully grasp. Jared escaped, but the others weren't meant to. They'd been molded into something, not lost, transformed. The forest, the same one that kept its secrets buried in root and soil, held answers too dark to surface. It hadn't died. It was waiting for another bus, another class. When Jared finally came forward, his words split the community in two. Some parents wept with a kind of bitter relief. A truth, no matter how twisted, was better than the silence. Others, they rejected him outright. They couldn't accept that their children had become something unrecognizable. To them, Jared was broken, a damaged soul trying to rewrite horror into meaning. Lines were drawn, rumors spread, accusations flew like ash from a fire. Some said he was responsible. Others called him a prophet. The media didn't hesitate. He was branded everything, from the only survivor to an unstable fraud. But Jared never bent. He kept speaking, because someone had to. Eventually, authorities placed him under protection. Too many whispers, too many threats, too many missing pieces. The militia, the commune, the trees. The unanswered grew louder with every day. Months passed. Jared, quiet and careful, released a memoir, a full retelling, a descent into madness, or truth. The book exploded. Some claimed it cracked open the forest's curse. Others dismissed it entirely. But none could deny he had seen something the world wasn't meant to witness. Even now, the town hadn't recovered. The memories of the class of '99 lingered like ghostly fingerprints on cold glass. The forest hadn't given them back. It never would. Years after escaping, Jared returned. A quiet gray afternoon. He walked the halls of 4 Grove High. Once a place of dreams, now a graveyard of memory. The memorial stood at the edge of the school grounds, names etched in cold stone. The lost, the taken. Jared stood before it, unmoving. Then, slowly, he removed something from his jacket. A damp, rotting yearbook. Its pages yellowed, Its spine cracked. He opened it to the final page, where no one had ever looked. He slid a note into the fold, something only he could have written. It read, "We tried to escape. Only I made it. I'm sorry." For minutes he didn't move. The names stared back at him, their weight heavy on his soul. The laughter, the terror, the screaming in the woods, and then, silently he left, leaving behind only the yearbook and the truth. A truth no one wanted to find. To this day, no one agrees. Some say Jared made it all up, that his trauma rewrote reality. Others, they believe it wasn't even the full story, that the forest still feeds, still waits, still watches. What happened to the class of '99 didn't end. It only paused. Their whispers still echo between the trees. So, what do you believe? Was Jared telling the truth? Or is something even darker still hidden beneath the moss? Drop your thoughts below. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell for more real-life nightmares.